Andrea Gunning.
And I'm Ben Fetterman.
And this is Dating Diaries, Questions and Confessions.
Dre, I heard we have a new member of the Stepover Squad. You have a black labradoodle.
His name is Mulaney, and he's just as funny, but maybe cuter than his namesake, my beloved John Mulaney.
I wish we could spend our entire time together talking about dogs, but that's not why we're here. Instead, we're going to visit with one of our singles from season 1, who also is a dog lover. And this one's a beast, Dre. We're dedicating the entire episode to discussing this one.
We met Adriana in season 1. Remember the American attorney living her dream life in Paris? Well, that's her. The last time we spoke, she was falling hard and fast for her new French beau.
We met on Bumble, and then we had our first date right before COVID. And then we had gone on a couple of French-style dates. He was so communicative. His messages were really funny. They were super witty and smart, and we had a lot in common. We really like analyzing language and poetry and looking at art, going to art galleries. We're both into Italian soccer. We have this real extreme passion for food, and he really challenges me on a lot of levels. To be honest, I've never been in a relationship where my boyfriend was smarter than I am. Never. I've dated a lot of people, unfortunately, and he is so smart. I'm pretty enamored in that sense with him.
It wasn't long after they met that the coronavirus lockdown hit France. They chose to quarantine together. This is when their cultural differences came to a head.
We started getting into a lot of fights. First, it was the dog. French people kind of think dogs are dirty, so dogs shouldn't be on the couch, shouldn't be in the bed, shouldn't lick you. Then it was me eating a snack in the afternoon. In France, it's considered so bad to snack. Then me being a little bit airheaded, tête en air is what they would say. It's really just that I can be forgetful, or sometimes I misplace things, or I'm disorganized. And not all French people, but many are really organized, and they don't want like a mess.
It sounded like there were cultural differences, and we thought, okay, there's potential here. There was an attraction, an intellectual meeting of the minds. And we said relationships aren't just about compatibility, but about mutual respect for your differences. We've recently checked in with Adriana to see how things were going, and it was pretty upsetting. We realized that she hadn't really told us the whole story. And it wasn't because she was lying. It was because she was in it and didn't see it.
These things would come up, but it was more about the way he reacted to them. He got really angry and really would start putting me down. And that was something that became too much. It would be like yelling and screaming, and then somehow he would blame the yelling and screaming on me, that I was being too sensitive. There got to be a point where he criticized the food I made, even though I made an American meal that he said he loved. He criticized the food, he criticized the wine I brought. He said it was like horrible. And even though I literally was just sitting there taking it, then he said, you make no effort to look pretty for me. You're wearing leggings. And I was just like, you know what? This is unbelievable.
Adriana started to realize that this was becoming less about culture and more about control.
We had so many commonalities in terms of things that we like to do and our interests, but it was just like the day-to-day criticism. And then I told him, I actually don't think it's just the criticizing. It's like this control thing. It's becoming a pattern where every time he hurts me, he comes back. And that's almost the only time he's nice is when he would come back. You know, there was like no more love and kindness in our relationship. It was only when he was apologizing for being awful, like calling me naive. He once told me that I have to talk to you like an idiot for you to understand. Even things like sexually were getting a little weird. He would get really mad if I wasn't wearing like fancy lingerie. And so he bought me lingerie, and he got it for me in the wrong sizes. They were too small. And then I told him I was gonna go exchange it. And he said, keep this size smaller so that you fit in it in the future. And I said, why? He's like, so I get a good return on my investment, because he wanted me to be skinnier.
Adriana rationalized. She held on to the sweet talk.
Whenever he would get really mad and did something awful, he would just come back and be like, but I love you, let's work it out. I always was like, okay, well, he's not a great person to other people, but he seemed like he loved me. One thing I really pride myself on is I have a lot of friends and people really love me. And he would demean my friendships and say, like, Adriana, you don't have close friendships. Like, these people don't actually love you. One time when we were in Italy together, my really close friends that I grew up with, they made me and him dinner cooked from scratch. It was really nice. They basically opened up a villa that they rent out for us. And he was so nice and kind. And basically, when I asked him at the end of the meal, what'd you think of that? Did you like meeting my friends? He was like, well, clearly they just wanted you to come over with the foie gras that we brought from France. Basically saying my friends don't actually care about me, that they only care about the money that I've spent on them.
He was isolating her. She finally had enough. But the manipulation continued. She couldn't stay away.
I ended the relationship and he seemed okay at first. He was like, I don't want to hurt you like this. I'm sorry. I know I'm overly critical and I need to work on it. But then he came to me and he begged and he said he wanted to go to therapy. He wanted to really work on himself, like both couples therapy and individual therapy, and that he had some things to work on. I mean, really, even when he agreed to go to a therapist, he said he's doing it for the relationship but not for him, because he didn't think that he had a problem. And I'm not someone who can say he has a problem. I just know that I've never been in a relationship where someone puts you down so much.
He wasn't invested. So you can imagine how that went.
I gave him a month to change. Within a week, he basically said that I had brainwashed him into thinking that he was a bad person, that there's nothing wrong with him, that he and his friends love him the way he is, and that we're just too different, and that essentially he was not going to change. So basically, although he begged for me back so many times, and then the last time even going to the lengths of seeing a therapist and coming to my house crying and all that, he just went out with his friends, got drunk, and was like, fuck it.
Adriana got herself out of a bad situation, but she still lost a love that was real, and that hurts.
I'm still grieving, in part because I gave him time to want to change, and I think I was expecting something more, but he decided he didn't want to change anything about himself, while I was actually taking the time to see maybe I have some codependent tendencies. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I should take things with a grain of salt. Maybe I should be more fun and relaxed, that kind of thing. I think the problem is I was that person and I am that person. It's just that when someone constantly criticizes you, you lose your sense of self.
She's still trying to understand how this happened, why she tolerated it.
I'm 34. I'm ready to have a family and I want to meet the right person. I've never been the kind of person who just wants to date anyone to have a kid. I won't do that. But I really felt like at this point I had met the right person because our values seemed to align. We had a lot in common and he was really communicative and really loving in the beginning. But now I see his communication was not really love. If it is love, it's not like a healthy form of love. It was kind of like control. Like, I want to be in a relationship with you. I want to control the narrative, and that is a problem. So no matter that he has traditional values, I want to be with a good person. I don't want someone who's going to treat me badly.
Traditional values include treating people with kindness.
I kind of beat myself up, but overall I'm glad that this is over earlier, because if I had had kids or something with him and I wasn't as dressed up all the time and like not perfect and going through a lot of shit, I think he would have been honestly a bad person for my mental health, but also for children.
Dre, where do we even start with this one?
What a fucking asshole. Like, thank God that there's travel restrictions, or else I'd go to Paris and seriously hunt this guy down. I don't even know how to react to the idea that someone would send someone lingerie a size or two down just to imply that she needs to lose weight.
But also just the constant criticism and arguing. It's not just about one thing. There isn't one problem here.
We got it so wrong. Originally, we thought that their differences could bring them together. It's like opposites attract. They have a mutual respect for each other's intellect. But the reality is, it's all about how someone presents their perspective and what they see is happening at the time. I don't think she was dishonest, but she didn't see the situation for what it really was. And so many of us get ourselves in that situation or are in that situation.
There are sometimes things going on, dynamics at play that outsiders will never understand and never fully conceptualize.
It really breaks my heart to hear the awful things that he said to her. And it sucks to be with someone who is just criticizing you all the time. It's just emotional abuse. It's just abusive. But putting Adriana aside and putting myself in his shoes, why the hell are you with someone that annoys you that much that you're going to be up their ass all the time to tell them what they're doing wrong? They look wrong. They're doing this wrong. They're snacking wrong. They're sleeping wrong. Like, why are you with a person that annoys you that much? It's wild.
Control, insecurity, low self-esteem. I mean, we don't know his side of the story, but what we do know is her experience of him is not acceptable. End of story. No one should have to endure that in a loving relationship because there's no love there. Where is the love?
I just feel like this is bigger than us, and I think we need to bring in the big guns.
I agree, Dre. I thought it made sense that we should talk to a relationship therapist. So I reached out to the one I know, my mom, Dr. Nedra. Mom, thank you for being here and talking through what we think is a really important topic and conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually feel very grateful to Adriana for sharing her story. It takes a lot of courage to give people a glimpse behind the scenes, what's really going on. And most of us don't do that. We want everything to look good. But relationships are tough. And I can imagine during coronavirus and being confined in a new relationship, it's particularly difficult.
Nedra, what were you thinking when you heard Adriana's story?
Whenever I sit with any couple, the very first question I ask is, what attracted you to this person? What attracted her to this guy was he was smart, witty, he was funny. She said they had a passion for food together, and he challenged her. And what struck me in hearing that description is that she's very drawn to his mind. But I noticed there was nothing about, he was tender, he was kind, he was compassionate, he was empathic. In fact, she said he treated her well, but she noticed he didn't treat other people well. I mean, this is disappointing. It's painful. I just felt the heartbreak of this story. The one thing we can get out of pain is wisdom. And I would say to her, the next time, look for a man with a heart. You don't want a heartless relationship.
It seems like where you would want to see the heart, you would want to see him open up to things that she was passionate about or things that she loved. He would criticize, and she justified it as cultural differences. So how, as individuals, do we avoid justifying things that ultimately don't feel right in a relationship?
Differences are going to show up. Difference creates richness, and so we're attracted to it. But difference is also threatening in some way. So imagine this inherent tension. I'm attracted to somebody who's different. And then we get into a relationship, the initial excitement and euphoria of discovering someone new and different wears off. And then it's like, well, why aren't you more like me? The reason why criticism comes up is we use criticism to try to change people. And that's not what happens. You put up defenses. You criticize me and I feel attacked. My brain says, danger, danger, danger. And then the brain is hardwired to defend. And the brain goes into either fight, flight, freeze, or fold. And at first she felt challenged by it. But when you're challenged, and you don't feel loved, or you don't feel cared for, or you don't feel understood, first she'll try to please him. That's the folding. I'll fold myself and try to please you. But after a while, you can freeze and get depressed, go numb, or you avoid, or she criticizes back.
I think that she was only seeing the relationship from one point of view because she was hopeful, right? Like she's communicating from a place of hope. And now she's communicating from a place of reality. And she's seeing some hard truth here.
In the beginning of every relationship, there's so much hope, there's so much excitement. It's almost like a drug. We call that the romantic love stage, the courtship stage, the honeymoon stage. When that wears off and you enter what we call the power struggle, that's when all the change messages come. Like, you're perfect, I love you, now change. And it's such a shock because if you talk to her in one stage, she's going to be very upbeat and very hopeful and very positive. But if that relationship shifted quickly into another stage, you're going to hear a lot of disappointment, a lot of hurt, a lot of fear, anger. And most people don't know how to handle that. Either they leave each other during that stage because it's so disappointing, or people tolerate it. And it sounds like she tolerated it until the relationship just deteriorates to a point where neither of them can take it, or you get help and you really learn the skills of relationship.
But what we're not talking about, this is really about him, his own projections, his own expectations, his own weird control mechanisms that he needs for some idealized image of what he wants her to be. These are him problems.
There's working through those issues. And then there's also acknowledging that this person isn't in a place to start working through. So this isn't a productive relationship for my life and I need to walk away. I dealt with a relationship where I looked after 3 years and I'm like, why did I put up with that behavior for so long? What does that say about my self-worth?
We all have agency, right? But you can see in how she's speaking, her agency started to go away because she started to believe that the things he was saying about her were true.
But once you get to that place of knowing, okay, objectively, that's not true, then there's another storm on the horizon of, how did I let myself get there?
She gives us a lot of clues. He challenged her from the very beginning. And in the beginning, it felt good. So she really welcomes being challenged. But over time, the challenging doesn't feel loving anymore. It's kind of like you put a frog in a hot pot of water and you turn on the flame and it feels nice and warm to the frog. And then the flame continues and eventually the water's no longer warm, it starts boiling and eventually the frog dies. It's like a very gradual shifting from something that feels good and warm to something that feels like it's going to kill you. And you go, how did I ever put up with this? But it's so gradual. Also, with this lingerie issue, in my own relationship, I got that gift of lingerie. And I remember my reaction. And my reaction was, this is not for me. Like, if you wanted somebody to wear this, you married the wrong person. And I did not take it personally. I was saying to him, you need to know who I am better. And if you're going to buy me a gift that's for me. So there's different ways to handle it, but that takes safety to be that honest rather than just in a dating relationship where there isn't all this commitment and safety. There's so much more insecurity on both parts. Like, oh, maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I am too heavy. Maybe I need to lose weight. Maybe he doesn't really love me the way I am.
It just felt like everything that he was putting in place to control her was based on his own insecurities. Like, to hear him say, your friends only like you because you're bringing foie gras from France. That feels like something that he feels insecure about, of what his relationships with his friends are like. He's projecting that onto her.
Who has the balls to say that to somebody? That's so rude.
It's just a hurtful way to keep her dependent on him. If he isolates her from the different parts of her life, that's going to make her more reliant on him. That's my concern in hearing this, is that what was exciting became extremely unhealthy really quickly.
I think when you start to really understand the full picture and see things for what it really is and the work he needs to do and everything he needs to overcome, it becomes less about her and taking it so personally. I think a lot of people, when they feel like they lost a love, it's like, what was wrong with me? Why couldn't he do more for me? Why couldn't he treat me better just because? And it becomes about the me, 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 me. When in reality, this is so much about the triggers that he's dealing with. It's turning into a not so great, unhealthy situation in terms of communication. But if you do lead from that place of that curiosity and vulnerability, it becomes clear that it's not about your worth. It's not really even that personal. The only thing that's personal is the interpersonal communication that's not happening.
Yes. Yes. Andrea, it's really not personal, and it's all about the triggers. My favorite line is, intimacy is a trauma trigger. When you get close to someone and you feel safe with someone, anything that is unresolved from your past is going to come up. And it comes up hoping to be understood, healed, and integrated. But nobody realizes what's happening. And I think she can walk away with her self-esteem intact. She took a risk. It was courageous. She opened up her heart. She gave it her best. It didn't work out. And she had the courage to walk away.
Nedra, thank you so much for coming on. I thank you for our listeners and for my own personal development.
Well, it's a complete pleasure to be here. We've all learned a lot through some of the most difficult relational experiences. I mean, love is a great teacher. So have a great day.
You too. Bye. Ben, your mom. 2 initial thoughts.
Let's hear them, because I have a lifetime of thoughts.
I'm obsessed with her. She's just like the warmest human being on planet Earth. I get why my mom has Nedra envy. And my second thought was, my mom's got to listen to this podcast and hear about my sex life. What's it like hearing about your mom's sex life? I remember when I found my mom's lingerie drawer and I was 8 and I had a mini meltdown. At least I didn't have to face her when I found that.
You mean over a Zoom while recording a podcast?
Yeah, you really played it cool. And I got to respect your dad for shooting your shot. And I respect your mom for blocking it.
Setting some boundaries.
So I just want to say this to anyone out there listening who has gone through a similar situation. You get so trapped in a shame spiral of, why did I let myself go there? And I can kind of hear it in Adriana's voice. It's really hard to hear Adriana so sad because part of herself still loves him. But at the end of the day, that shame spiral is just not going to serve you. Every one of these relationships is a learning experience. So be gentle with yourself. It's not a reflection of your self-worth. It's so easy to go like, what is so bad about me that allowed that person to be that shitty to me? I must be such an idiot. That's not serving you. That's not productive. You are a badass bitch. And she's going to walk away learning so much about herself and what that next relationship should look like. She just gained a ton of emotional muscle.
AFCO, another fucking growth opportunity. Use it.
Use it, Adriana. We love you. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Well, I'm emotionally drained, but also emotionally empowered. That's all I have for today. Next week is our last episode of the season, and I'm so excited.
Don't forget to follow us at Dating Diaries QC.
I'm Andrea Gunning. Stay safe out there, guys.
This podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Andrea Gunning. Executive produced by Nancy Glass, Ben Fetterman, and Carrie Hartman. Produced by Julie Clark and Brianna Fars. Edited by Matt Del Vecchio. Thanks to production coordinator Megan Paisley. The show is mixed by Dave Saya. Special thanks to Mybe Music. Some names have been changed to protect privacy.
The contents of this show, Dating Diaries, Questions and Confessions, is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The commentary and opinions on this show should not be taken as professional advice.